Scan Pro Video brings you a series of webinars focusing on the latest Blackmagic design products and information.
Hi everyone. So welcome to the Scan Pro Video webinar for Fairlight for audio editors. We are scheduled to start sort of 3 o'clock. I might give it a minute or two just if there's any sort of stragglers that might want to join in that are running a little bit late. But we'll dive in. First of all, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come on this webinar with us. A few little bits of housekeeping really. Everyone's going to be muted throughout it. There's quite a lot to cover, so rather than sort of stop and answer questions as we go, we're just going to try and get through as much as we can. And then if you have any questions, at any point, feel free to pop them in the chat, and I'll get round. We'll try and aim to do a bit of a Q&A at the end of the session as well. Hopefully, we're going to do maybe 45 minutes to an hour. Today, we don't want to take up too much of your time, but we'll try and get through as much Fairlight, as much audio sort of stuff as we can. So, do you know what? I will share my screen just now. Let me just share that. I want to share the sound as well. Otherwise, this is going to be a very silly webinar. So share. There we go. So everyone should now be able to see my screen. Let me just, got someone waiting there. Them in. Okay. I'll just get a chat window up on the side as well here, just so I can try and monitor everything that's going on. Okay, so like I said, thank you for joining us today. It is massively appreciated. We know everyone's probably very busy and sick of webinars, Zoom, Teams, whatever it is, whatever conferencing platform it is that you're working on. Or that we all seem to have spent most of the last year on. So we really appreciate you joining us today. Another thing I guess that's worth mentioning is don't worry if you feel I'm going a little bit fast. We are recording this session and it will be made available after the fact on our YouTube channel. We might trim, the beginning and the end a little bit, but the bulk of the content is going to be there. So if you miss something or you're not following along with a specific section, don't worry about it, because you can always go back and watch it after the fact as well. So a little bit of an introduction. My name is Alistair Davidson. I am a freelance video editor and colorist. I'm a certified DaVinci Resolve master trainer, and I do some work for Scan Pro Video as well. So you might have seen me pop up here and there on their YouTube channel as well. So what we're going to look at today is DaVinci Resolve and specifically Fairlight within DaVinci Resolve for editors. And audio, I don't know about you guys, but audio can come across as a bit of a dark art at times, especially for video editors. We send it to post houses, we send it to audio engineers to do that side of it. We don't tend to dig in and do a great deal of it ourselves, unless you're operating as a sort of one-man band, a one-man or one-stop shop for everything, from capture through to delivery. So what we're going to do is we're going to try and demystify Fairlight a little bit, because it's not whilst it is a new set of tools, it's nothing to be scared of, really. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to import a project, and rather than just import a project, I'm going to restore a project archive. Now, this isn't really anything to do with Fairlight, but it's something I always try and point out when I'm doing training, because a lot of people don't realize that Resolve can do this, and it's actually really helpful. So I've gone all the way to my project, my folder where my project's stored. So it's on my RAID and all these folders, and I have what's called a .dra file, and DRA stands for DaVinci Resolve Archive. Now, previously, in earlier versions of Resolve, you'd be used to seeing what's called a DRP, or a DaVinci Resolve project file. And that's just the project itself. It doesn't contain any of the media, whereas a DaVinci Resolve archive does. So all I have to do is select my DaVinci Resolve archive folder, hit open, Resolve will take a little bit of time thinking about it. It's got to relink everything. And then there we go. Fairlight for editors, that project has been imported. And if I double click on that to go into the project, you'll notice that it's done the fantastic thing that when you normally import a project, you rarely see. And that is everything's relinked. I don't need to go in, there's no media offline, I don't need to relink everything. That's the joy of using an archive, a DaVinci Resolve archive, to move projects from one. Do you know what? Let me just quit Teams here. There we go. So yeah, that's the joy of using the DaVinci Resolve archive file. It has all of the media and the project together. When I restore that archive, all the media is already there and linked. So that little bit of sort of media management out of the way. We're going to start in the media page. We'll have a quick look at the edit page, and then we'll dive into the Fairlight page. We'll get the less glamorous stuff out the way early, because you know there's not really much you can say about ingest and make it exciting. So what we're working on today is just a scene from a short film called Hyperlight. And when we've restored our project, you can see we've still got all our bins and all of our media in here. The first thing I want to do is just sort of highlight that in the media page, we have our viewer, and this is where we're used to being able to see our video clips here. What I'll do, actually, I'll unmute this. I'll apologize in advance. I don't know how loud the audio is going to be through your speakers. So I'm going to give you a heads up now that I'm going to play some audio. It might be a bit loud. If you just want to take some time, or just adjust the volume, or if you've got headphones, maybe pull them out a little bit just in case. I don't want to deafen anyone with this. So just hopefully I've not deafened anyone just by doing that. So that leads me on to what I was saying anyway. The preview, or the viewer that we have on the top of the media page, we're used to seeing video clips in there. We can also view our audio clips in there as well. So the thumbnail shows us a waveform of our clip, but our viewer does as well. So we actually have our waveform up top here. And you'll see that we have two waveforms because this is a stereo file. There's two channels of audio in it. And we can see that over here in the metadata pool. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to turn off that live media preview option there that stops it scrubbing over and just blurting out random bits of audio. So I have a clip here, two channels of audio. I can see that it's reflected up here in the viewer. For a mono track, we'll just have one waveform up there as well. So it's a really handy way for us to just quickly identify what sort of files we have. And one of the other things, the only main thing we're going to take a look at on the media page here is the clip attributes. Now you might be used to these for things like superscale or frame rate changes for high frame rate clips. But we can use them to affect audio as well. So if I right click on a clip in the media pool here and just go to clip attributes here, this sort of middle option, it'll open the clip attributes window, and you'll see video is grayed out because I've selected an audio file. So if I come across to my audio tab, what I see here is the audio set up for that file, and that's how it's going to be added to our timeline. So when I drag this clip onto our timeline, it's going to create one stereo track, and in that track, we're going to have the left channel, embedded channel 1, and embedded channel 2. Now, you might be asking, well, why is this important? Why do I need to know this? But it comes in really handy if we've been recording, say, we've been recording audio in camera. We've been using, the camera mic as a scratch track, but we might also have, a shotgun mic sitting on top of the camera for a little bit better quality audio if we're in a sort of run and gun situation. Or if you're using, a field recorder, like a multi-track or multi-channel field recorder, where you might have one lav mic, you might have a boom mic, you might have something else. LTC if you're feeding the LTC into the field recorder, and we can choose which tracks we want to use or we want to import into the timeline when we work with it. So, for example, we've got a stereo track here that will be added with our left and right channels. If I wanted them to be separate tracks on the timeline, I could just come up to here, change my format to mono, I want to add 2 tracks, one for the left, one for the right. And then if I hit add here, you'll see I've now added 2 mono tracks. One automatically, the first one has our left channel and the second one has our right channel. Now I could delete the stereo track if I wanted. If, you know, we're recording audio in camera, and one of them is the scratch audio from the camera, the other is like a shotgun mic that we talked about, you know, we might not want to use the in-camera audio, so I can delete that one as well. So now when I add this clip into my timeline, I'm going to add it with just 1 mono track, and with that left channel only in there. So that's really, really handy to know, really good for sort of like quick setup stuff. If, you know, you're doing separate audio recording, it's really easy to just sort of jump on that, do it right at the beginning of the project, and then you don't have to think about it after the fact. Something else I probably should have mentioned, which it's inherent in the nature of webinars and Zoom, I guess. The audio quality through Zoom isn't fantastic. If, you know, you've used any sort of conferencing platform over the last sort of year or 18 months, however long it is we've been stuck inside, you'll know that the audio isn't the best. So we're not going to get into really fine tuning things here today. I'm more showing you workflow things, little quick tips and tricks that you might need to know, you know, if you're looking to do a bit more audio editing. So don't expect, you know, massive sound designs or anything like that. We're not really going to go super granular with it. So yeah, we're done pretty much with the media page. That's all I really wanted to show you. If I jump across to the edit page, this is where, or what most of us are going to be familiar with. We have, again, our preview viewer, our timeline viewer, our source and timeline viewer, whatever you want to call them. We have our video tracks and our audio tracks down here in the timeline. And it's not like, you know, the edit page is completely limited and useless when it comes to audio. It works very well. You know, we have quite a lot of control here. If I actually open my mixer along the top right here, you'll see I get a pop-out mixer with all my tracks here, and I've got some control. You know, I have pan control. I can, you know, adjust the faders if I want to. I can go in and I can adjust things at clip level as well if I want. I can even look at adding effects, and I'll jump onto that in a second. What I'll do is I'll close the media pool for just now. But one of the things, you know, we're just going to sort of quickly consider is what we might want to do before we sort of jump in, or what we might want to know or understand before we jump into the Fairlight page. And that's that everything that we do on the edit page is carried across to the Fairlight page. And that's one of the really great things about Resolve, and that's why I love having all the pages in one application, rather than having to export and round trip and all that sort of stuff, which can get really messy at times. The fact that I can, you know, let's take the first clip on this A2 track here. If I open the inspector, I'm just going to bring the volume down a bit. And I can do that in the inspector, or I can actually do it by grabbing this small horizontal white line over the clip itself and drag that up or down. You'll see as I do that, it reflects in the volume slider here. And again, as I do that there. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to push that all the way up, just as an example. And now if I jump across to the Fairlight page, you'll see the audio there, extremely loud. If I open my inspector, select that clip, you can see it keeps that there. I'm just going to reset that because I don't want to deafen myself or you guys. But it's just handy to know that what we can do in the edit page translates across to the Fairlight page really easily. So it's not like if you want to start doing, you know, quick adjustments whilst you're building your edit, you are stuck on the you're stuck with having to move to the Fairlight page. You can start an edit in the edit page and then jump across to the Fairlight page at a later point. We've got everything in here from, you know, some basic controls. So we've got volume, pan, pitch. We have speed change, and we'll look at that a little bit later, mainly in the Fairlight page. And we have a really sort of basic EQ in here as well. Sorry, 1 second, just having a bit of a nightmare there. So we have our basic controls here. So EQ, all that sort of stuff. And again, it's reflected on the Fairlight page as well. But one of the things I said I was going to come back to was effects. So again, if I open my effects library and come down to audio effects, if I go to Fairlight effects, you see I've got, a range of, basic effects in here that we want, and I might just drag and drop one of them on. I can do this at track level or at clip level, however I want to do it. I might drag it onto a track here and just, auto saving that for me. And I'm just going to start playing with some parameters. I'm not doing anything, to be super, fancy about this. I'm just doing this as an example. And I put that on track 1, and it's an echo. So as I now, I'll solo track 1 by hitting this small S on the fader here and play. Identify the person I'm speaking. And you can hear that echo is applied there. Now, if I don't like that, I can always just reset it using that button there. And I'll reset it there. But again, what I also want to show is that, again, effects, apply across as well. So I've jumped across to the Fairlight page, and you'll see on our channel strip here, we've got a bit more information, but you can see under effects, that echo is applied there as well. Well, I'm not bothered about the echo, so I'm just going to delete that. So edit page, really simple, really basic, not really basic, but it's a stripped back version for some sort of quick audio edits. And for a lot of people that might be okay. It's all down to the sort of project you find yourself working on, really. But we're going to get a bit more in depth with it. So there's some things to know about the edit page, reasons why you might not want to use it for a full mix, and stuff. It's little things like on the edit page we are limited to frame level editing, so we can't go to subframe or sample level like we can in a DAW, a digital audio workstation. Not in the edit page, but we can do that in the Fairlight page. There's no real control over dynamics, things like the compressor, the gate, the limiter. We don't have that on the edit page, and there's just a few less tools overall, really. So, like I said, it's not completely limited, but if we want the full range of control, that's why we'll go across to the Fairlight page, which is what I'm going to do here. I'm going to jump across and we'll finally dive in. Sorry, we're 17 minutes in and we've not even touched the Fairlight page yet. So we're in the Fairlight page now, and first thing I'm going to do is I'll do a quick run through the interface. So along the top of the window here, you'll see we have meters. So if I hit play,
yes,
you'll see I've got all my track meters here. We have the meter for our mix, our final, our output bus here. We have our control room, which is my the monitoring setup that we have, and we have loudness meters up here. Again, we have our timeline down the bottom here, and we have the mixer here, which I can drag in or out to reveal all of the channel strips there if I want. So I touched quickly on the control room there, and that's, like I said, that's how we monitor. So that's this little section here where I have a volume slider. So, if it's a bit too loud, I can turn that down. I can mute it completely, or I can dim it, which will just sort of like reduce the audio, so I'm not deafening anyone while I do that. That's normally what I do when I'm doing, the basic sort of intro to DaVinci Resolve type training, but with focusing on Fairlight and on audio, I want to make sure you're able to hear exactly what we're doing throughout all of this. So down here, we've had a look at the sliders there, the dim controls, but we also have this mix and main as they show up here. And these are our buses. So right now I have two buses. I have one for a Dolby mix, and I have one for one that's just titled mix. And I'm just going to use the mix one just now. And then this main drop down, that is our speaker setup. So if, right now we have two speakers set up and they might not mean anything to you. What is main, what is near? Well, if I come up here to the top left, DaVinci Resolve, and I go to preferences, or I use Control, comma, or if you're on a Mac, Command, comma, that'll open the preferences window. And up here we have two tabs, system and user. I'm just going to stay in system, and I'm going to come down to video and audio IO here. And under speaker setup, you can see the monitor set that I have set up at the moment is main. We also have near, and then we have a range of other speaker setups that we can set up and use. So if you might have your audio IO connected to some speakers, you might have headphones connected directly to a different audio I/O or to the system, or you might have a different monitoring setup for depending on where you are. If you've got an ADR booth, you're going to have headphones or speakers in there, so the talent can hear what's going on. So you can set up all these different speaker sets and switch between them, as we said, just here under the sort of control settings there. So we're going to start doing a mix here really quickly. And the first thing that really you'll notice with any audio mixer, the first thing, best practice really, is we start with all our faders at 0. So we're not going to start making sweeping changes to tracks off the bat. And you can see here all the faders. We can click on them, we can adjust them here. And if we do, if you move them and they're ever out of line and you want to get back to 0, rather than just try and hover over it and drag it to the right place, you can just double click and it'll do a reset for you that way. So, as I said, we're starting with our faders at 0. We're not going in and we're not making sweeping changes to a whole track at once. What we're going to do is we're actually going to look at clip gain, and we sort of touched on this a little bit ago when I was jumping between the edit and the Fairlight page. And what clip gain is this volume control here, basically. What we want to do, if I look at my timeline, I'm just going to use Shift-Z to squeeze my timeline down into a single view here. And if we look at this, we can see the waveforms on our clips here. And on this dialogue track, this ADA track, it's fine. They're roughly the same level. But if we go up to this Philip track, this DX dialogue Philip track, we can see there's a really sort of quiet bit here with some louder bits here. And again, I'm going to solo that, so that's the only track we're listening to.
There's this explosion and it surrounded the whole ship. We also sustained some alive.
It's a whisper. It's the second part's a bit of a whisper, but it's still a bit quiet. If we wanted to get everything to the right level, again, we could use our clip gain controls there just to sort of bring that up a little bit. Again, you could use the select that clip if you want and use the volume slider in there just to try and get them to the same level. Again, we're just trying to balance everything on a clip level before we go in and start pulling whole audio tracks down and up. Because if you're jumping between quiet and loud quite a lot on a single dialogue track, well, making a global change, say I'm going to make that quieter, well, everything that was already quiet is going to be almost inaudible. If I made it louder, everything that's loud is going to be far too loud. It's going to clip and it's going to distort. So really, we're just trying to get a nice balance throughout that track before we start doing, or on a clip level before we start doing anything there. So again, you can go through, you can solo individual tracks if you want. At the beginning here, we'll go to this Emiliana dialogue track.
Ada, identify the person I'm speaking with. Identify the person on the med lab.
There we go. Again, quite a significant difference there between the two. So I might just pull that up. Again, you'll notice as I pull that up, the waveform resizes with it as well. A few handy shortcuts if you want to sort of zoom in to different parts on the Fairlight timeline. If I hold down Shift and then scroll, you'll see that I increase the track height. If I hold down the Alt key or Option if you're on a Mac and scroll, I scroll the track horizontally as well there. And again, I can use Shift-Z to just sort of squeeze everything down and then just hold down Shift and scroll to just reduce the track height there as well. We have sliders up here for this as well, so the vertical and horizontal control if you want to use a slider and be a bit more accurate. But I tend to use Shift and Alt to quickly go between them there. So we've set some rough sort of audio levels here. If we'd done that in the edit page and then we'd handed it off to an audio mixer, for example, if we'd set that on the edit page and then we're giving it to our sound guy, generally what they tend to do is just start from scratch. Often it tends to be a bit quicker just starting from scratch rather than starting on a project that someone's already been doing some work and you might not know what they've done, what effects have applied, all these sorts of things. And we can easily get to a base starting point. If I right click on a clip here, I can go to remove attributes just there. So if I hit remove attributes, we'll get this pop-up window. Once it asks me what attributes I want to remove, well, I can select all of them, or if it's just plugins with the EQ, I can select them, or, you know, like I said, all of them. So again, I'll cycle through, just remove all of them. And there we go. We're starting from a very basic layer here. Another thing, track layout, you can't, you know, click and drag to move tracks. I've seen people try that. It doesn't work, but I can, if I want to move a track, I can right click. I can move tracks up and down by right clicking on the track header. I can add, you know, any specific type of track if I want, or I can use add tracks. A little bit that's quite handy to know is that if I hit add track and then just add it, it will always add it at the bottom of my track list. And I don't want that, so I'm just going to delete that track. But if I want to add, say I wanted to add, there's a fourth character in this, so we're going to add another dialogue track. If I right click and go to add tracks, plural, I get a pop-up window, and it asks me how many tracks I want to add, and then the position of where I want to add them. So if this is the fourth dialogue track, I'm going to throw it in there. It's going in below DX Ada, and it's just going to be a mono track. Why not? Hit add track, you'll see it just drops in there nicely. So if you're ever wanting to be a bit precise with where you add the tracks, rather than having to right click, move up, right click, move up, and all these sorts of things, you can just use the add tracks function to do it on a really quick way. Another thing we'll sort of touch on really quickly is this index here. So the index allows us to see all of our tracks, jump between them. We can click on the eye here to actually hide a track. Doesn't remove the track from the project. It just stops it from being visible. So we're never going to make any sort of mistakes and affect an audio track that we don't want to affect that way. So what else in terms of viewing really our tracks? It's kind of handy, I'd say. I'm going to hit on view at the top here. I'm going to come down to show audio track layers. And what you'll notice is it just seems to have made things a little bit slimmer. The track's a little bit slimmer in height. But if I zoom in on this this sort of background drone track here, you'll see that in fact, what I'll do is I'll turn that off again so you can see what that looks like before and after. So you'll see it just looks like a stereo track. You know, we've got our 2 channels in here and 3 clips in there that fill that track. But if I go to view and then go to audio track layers, you'll see that it is 3 clips, but it's on 2 separate layers and they fade between each other. Now, why is this important? Well, in the case of this drone, by taking the clips, sort of layering them on top of each other and putting a fade in there, it makes that drone seem as if it's continuous. In the case of, you know, ADR, we're doing dialogue replacement. We might prefer the way the actor said one word in a sentence over the other. So we might have multiple takes, and we can just layer those up. You know, we can layer up the word or the sentence that we liked from one take on top of another, and so on and so forth. And it works very much like layers in video editing. So if I put something on my video track 2 on top of a clip on video track 1, what's on video track 1 is going to be played out. And it's the same with audio. So as soon as we get along up to here, it's the second layer that's played out. And then when there's nothing on the second layer, it goes back to that first layer. So kind of handy to keep in mind. Again, mainly for things like ADR, it's really handy to do it there. Yeah, so what next? We'll have a look at some of the quick sort of editing functions. In the edit page, we'll be used to like trim mode, you know, for our ripple trims or slips, things like that. But in the Fairlight page, we have some different tools. We have our selection mode, which we can just select a clip and drag. As you'll notice, as I do that, it actually goes, the clip that I've selected goes transparent. And that's really handy because, you know, if I come up here, for example, where we're looking at some of these audio tracks, if I'm trying to be really precise, I can click and drag and then just sort of line things up. You know, I'm doing this over the top here, but if I wanted to say, if I was trimming, you know, that translucence allows me to see what's underneath, and it just makes the whole trimming process a little bit easier. Especially if we're editing, you know, to dialogue, we're trying to make things a bit snappy. being able to see what we're doing underneath any selected clip is really handy at all times. Next to that, we have our selection mode here, and with the selection mode, I can click and drag to highlight a range. And once I've done that, it's very much like setting an in or out point. But once I've done that and I've dragged over a clip, you'll see that I can actually just click and drag that section now. So it doesn't matter if I undo that. It doesn't matter, for example, that this is a single clip. I could just select that section there. And then if I just want to move that little section of audio, I can click and drag, and Resolve cuts it out to be a separate clip. So that's really handy. Again, if I want to clear any sort of in or out points or any range that I've selected, I can use Alt or Option if you're on a Mac, and then X, and that'll clear that. And then the third tool we have here is Edit Selection Mode. And this is a sort of combination of the two, and it depends where on the clip I'm clicking. So if I click on the top half, you'll see I get this little crosshair, and that's my selection tool, which functions in the same way. I can select a range and then click and drag. But if I click on the bottom half of a clip, I can then just move it like I would any other clip. So I don't have to switch between edit modes whenever I'm doing that. So really, really simple, really easy stuff. I'm going to close the inspector. And another thing I'm going to do is, I mentioned speed changes earlier when we were actually looking in the inspector. There's a speed change section there. What we're going to look at in Fairlight is called the elastic waveform, or elastic wave. So if I select a clip, right click, and then go to elastic wave, you'll see I got a little bar along the top that says elastic wave. And now if I just drag that clip out, you'll see that it's actually stretching the clip out or shrinking it up. And what Resolve's doing is it's retiming that clip for us and doing a pitch correction as well. So if I solo this track here, so we're just listening to this, and play. Oh, wait a minute, switched over there, that's what's confusing me. So if I do that again, hit play. It's a bit too slow, you know. I'm not going to pass that off as you know, a decent choice. But you can see what I mean. If I speed it up a little bit again,
I cannot explain this.
You'll see it's not suddenly getting really high pitch or really low pitch when we stretch it out. When we do that retime, Resolve does the pitch correction for us automatically, which is, again, really, really handy. So some basic tools, basic things there. What else can we have a look at in the time that we have? One of the things that I used to get asked a lot when teaching Resolve or working with Resolve was editing to a beat. So if I wanted to edit to, say we're on a music track and I wanted to edit to a beat, we have now in DaVinci Resolve 17 what's called transient detection. And transients are sort of sharp changes in audio. And to turn that on, all I have to do is come along to this, the sliders here, where we had height and width of our tracks. If we come along, we have timeline view options, and then we have transient detection next to it. So all I have to do is click that to turn it on. And now you'll see in all of the track headers, we have a little transient detection button. Well, I'm going to turn it on for this heart monitor, probably because it's the easiest thing we can see it on this heart monitor track. And you'll see as I turn that on, next, I'll zoom in a little bit as well. As I turn that on, whoops, you'll see I now have black vertical bars at the beginning and end where there's sharp changes in the audio levels. And that just allows me to see exactly where these transients are, where those sharp changes are in the clip. So for example, if I was editing a music video, I might do this on the kick drum, that sort of that beat, that rhythm, and I'm going to use those as things like my cut points. So it's a really handy way to identify those, and they work just like markers. So I can use the down arrow on the keyboard to just jump between them as if they were markers. Obviously, it's jumping between the clips on the upper levels as well, and the upper and lower levels. But if I want, I can just jump between the transient detection markings. They are just using the up and down arrows on my keyboard. It's also really handy if you're looking for like, or you're trying to remove a cough or a sneeze or something like that, something that's been picked up on the audio track. You can turn on transient detection, you can locate it, and you can get rid of it really quickly, really easily. So scale this down a little bit. There we go. So it's a basic sort of overview of the tools we have on the Fairlight page. So let's take a quick look at some of the techniques we have that can make things actually easier for working. And one of the things that gets a lot of people caught up is actually the busing and routing. A lot of people sort of panic and they can't get their heads around busing and routing, and it can be a bit confusing if you've never worked with it before, especially editors who are just used to having tracks and then one sort of output mix. It can be a little daunting to understand why we have different buses and how we use them. So we're going to try and break this down a little bit. And the way we're going to look at it is we're actually going to split our tracks here. So you'll see we have dialogue for Emiliana, Philip, Ada. We have the room tone, and then we have effects and music. So we have the heart monitor, this med lab, we have the background drone, and then we have the music track down at the bottom. Well, what if I wanted to control, all the audio tracks together? All the dialogue tracks together, or I wanted to control all these sound effects tracks together. I could sit here and I could, if I was applying a plugin, I could apply a plugin to every clip or to every track and then copy it, and it just becomes a long-winded workflow. We don't need to do that. If we can just group everything together and affect them as a whole, it saves us a massive amount of time when we're doing that. So buses, you heard me talk about them. Let's actually get into using some of them, shall we? So I'm going to just set that to no input. I don't know how that changed. There we go. So buses. How do we add buses? Well, if I come up to Fairlight drop down here and then to this bus format window, this first option, select that, I'll get a little pop-out menu here that shows me my buses. The first bus we have is our mix, stereo mix. All of our audio tracks are being mixed down onto this mix bus. Well, I wanted to control my dialogue and my sound effects separately. So for that, I'm going to add two buses. So I just hit add bus, add bus. I'm going to make them stereo. And if you're like me, when it comes to editing, you can be a bit sort of picky when a visual representation of everything. I'm going to change the colors. So my dialogue track, I'm going to change that to DX. And I'm going to make it orange. That's the color I picked. And for my FX track, let's pick a color, shall we? I'm going to go with pink. Why not? And then once I'm happy with them, just hit OK, and it doesn't look like anything's changed. But if I pull my mixer a little bit down the bottom here, we'll now see my two new buses. So we have mix, we have dialogue, and we have FX in there. So as I played through there,
Came out of cryo. And
you'll see there's no audio going to them. Well, that's because there's nothing routed to those buses at the moment. So what are we going to do? Well, I'm going to stop routing my dialogue tracks here to my main mix output, and I can do that just by clicking on this small X if I hover over the word mix. Do that, and I'm going to include the room tone in this as well. So there we go. My dialogue tracks aren't going anywhere. If I hit play now, despite the fact that we have Philip talking, we're not going to hear it because it's not going to our main mix, which is what we're monitoring. So what we're going to do, I'm going to come down to this bus output section on the channel strip, and I'm going to hit DX on all of them. I'm going to route it to my new dialogue bus in there. And I'm going to do the same for all my FX. So there's a few here. I'm not going to include the music because that's separate. So go in, we'll do that again, FX. And again, you'll see everything's color coded. It's really handy to just sort of visually see things as you do them. Especially, a lot of editors will work with clip colors, track colors, and you can sort of build them however you want, however easy it is for you to see those things. So again, now if I hit play, you'll see we have movement on both of these buses. Again, we're not hearing them because our audio isn't going to our final mix, which is what we're monitoring. So what do? We've routed our input tracks to the buses. We'll now route our buses to our final mix. So again, this clip here, this little plus sign, down to our mix. Again, if I go back again.
Hyperlight core came out of these.
There we go. We've got everything in there, and we can now sort of separate out our audio tracks, and they're all controlled from a single fader now. So if I hit, if I hit play on my sound effect, or if I hit play, I'll be able to pull all my sound effects down as one. So
We came out of cryo, and we've been trying to fix.
So as I play there, you can see I can pull the audio down, push it up. If, in this case, the sound effects are a bit too overpowering, a bit too harsh, I could just pull them down a little in there. I could push the audio up, all these sorts of things. So again, really simple. And if I wanted to monitor just one of these at any point, like I said, come up to our control section here, and under this first drop down, I can select the dialogue track if I want.
Or came out a few days ago.
Or the sound effects. Just going to go to mix because it's easier to sort of work with everything there as well. So that's really handy for things like controlling all the tracks as one. We can apply effects to these buses as well. So if we wanted to apply the same noise reduction effect or reverb effect, we can do that all on these buses. And it's just going to mix it down into a stereo output and feed that into our main mix output here. If we wanted a little bit more control over things like audio effects, we can actually set up a separate bus for that, and what's called an auxiliary bus. So what I'm going to do for this, again, I'm going to come back to my Fairlight drop-down menu. I'm going to go to bus format, and I'm going to add another bus in here. And I'm just going to call this bus reverb. Wow, reverb, there we go. I can spell it right. And I'm going to make my reverb bus, I'm going to make it chocolate. Who doesn't love chocolate? So again, I can pull this out. If I have, there we go. We now have my reverb bus in there as well. So if I play back, again, we're not getting anything there, but that's because we're not sending anything to that bus. Again, instead of routing everything from our bus here, so from our bus outputs to our channel strip bus outputs to a mix bus and then back to our mix, what we're actually going to use is we're going to use some of the send functionality, and you'll see it's not actually up here, and it's just the way Resolve defaults. If you don't see this, don't panic. You can turn it on or off using this 3-dot menu at the top here. So if I click on that, you'll see pan isn't shown, so I couldn't affect the pan there if I wanted to, and our bus sends weren't there as well. So all I'm going to do is for my dialogue tracks, say this wasn't shot on a spaceship, this was shot in a cathedral as an example. I'm going to send my dialogue tracks, I'm just going to send them to this new reverb bus that I've created. And what I'll have to do is I'll have to actually apply some reverb. So I've opened my effects library, come down to the reverb plugin here, and I'm just going to drag and drop that on. And in the interest of saving time, I'm going to go to the drop-down default here and select cathedral. Well, I've recorded this in a cathedral, not in a spaceship. So now, if I hit play,
Hyperlight core.
Again, doesn't sound as if anything's coming in on that. And again, it's because it's not going anywhere. This is one of the major things that catches people out. We've routed stuff to a bus, but that bus doesn't go anywhere. So again, if I just send that to the mix output there and I hit
Hyperlight core.
That should
Came out a few days ago.
let me have a look. I know exactly why that is. And it's actually a good talking point here. So as you can see, the bus sends have a separate fader. So what we're doing really here is, easy way to think of this is our clips come in, they are in our track, they go through this processing, they're sent out to our bus, and then fed back. Well, there's a separate fader here for each of them, and the fader for those two tracks is actually down. So I'll turn them up there, and now there we go. We have our reverb effect applied there. We can control how much of that effect we want. If I jump back using this fader. So it's, you know, I've pulled it quite down a little bit there. You can push it up again. Again, you can hear the effect that that has there. I can do the same thing on a global scale for those three tracks by using the fader on that track as well. So if I play through, and I'm just going to use the fader on my reverb track here.
Hyperlight Core came out a few days ago.
You can see as I move that fader, we can hear that reverb, how that mixes in as well there. The last sort of thing I'm going to have a look at in terms of grouping and controlling multiple tracks simultaneously is what's called groups here. But you know, you may recognize them as what's called a VCA, or a voltage controlled amplifier, and these function slightly different to buses. So in terms of buses, we're taking all of our audio tracks and we're mixing them down into, you know, in the case of the buses that we've made here, stereo. So we're mixing them down into a stereo track, and then we're feeding them off wherever we want. If we don't want to do that, and we just want to control the volume as a group, we would use groups or VCAs. And to apply or to add any track into a group, we do exactly what we've done with our bus outputs here. So we come down to our group heading in the channel strip mixer. If I click on that, we already have one here that's made for us called dialogue. So I'll just add all of our dialogue clips to that. And again, I will pull my mixer out a little bit, and you'll see as soon as I've added things to that group, our dialogue group has just become available in here. And what you'll notice is in the channel strip for the dialogue mixer, it doesn't have support for effects, for EQs, for pans, because all it's designed to do is give us control of the fader. So if I now play that back,
Came out of cryo.
you'll see as I move this voltage controlled amplifier, or this group, you can see all four faders move simultaneously. If I reset that, say, you know, not everything's going to be the same. I'm going to move these all slightly independently. If I now move my group, you'll see they all move in tandem. And because faders and decibels work in a logarithmic way, as I get closer to the bottom, you'll see how they sort of catch up to each other quite quickly. And then as I move up, they spread out again, all the way up until they hit 0, which is the maximum sound level for the system, in which case they start to compress again in there. So that's the difference between, you know, groups or VCAs, voltage controlled amplifiers, and busing. And it's quite handy to know that you have that control if you don't want to get involved. The easy way to think of it is if you think, you know, what am I actually going to be doing with these tracks? Am I going to want to apply effects to loads of, say, you know, multiple tracks at once? Am I going to want to EQ multiple tracks at once? In that case, you're probably better off using a bus. If you just want to control the volume, the group or the VCA is the way to do that. So we're getting a bit pressed for time here. I'm trying my hardest to get through as much of this as quickly as I can. And I will continue. So what I'm going to do, I'll just close, but I won't close the mixer. I'll shut it over just a little bit. And I'm going to look at automation really quickly. Now, if you're working in the edit page, you might know that you can apply keyframes. What I'm doing here is I'm holding down the Alt or the Option button if you're on a Mac, and clicking, left clicking, and I'm putting keyframes on an audio track, and I can pull it up or down like that. It's not the most glamorous way to do it. It works. It's quick. It's dirty. It's a way of doing it. But what if we want something a bit more refined, a bit easier to work with? Well, this is where automation steps in. And to enable automation, we have to come up to our transport controls here, and right at the end we have this automation icon. So when I turn that on, you'll see I get another set of controls that pops up, and we can sort of dive in. You could spend hours talking about automation, but we're not going to. So all we're going to do is we're going to write automation. So that means that as we play through our clip, we're actually just going to start adjusting fader level. We'll choose. I'm going to set this to latch because that means that if I let go of the fader, say my finger slips off the mouse button or whatever, it doesn't jump back to 0, it just stays where I left it. And I'm going to enable it for the fader. Why not? And what am I going to do it with? I'll do it with, let me see, as background drone. Yeah, I'll do it with background drone. So I'm going to turn on automation for that track, pull out my fader, my mixers again, and you'll see it's going red now. So as I hit play, I can just click and drag that. And this is what's called raiding the fader. So as I move that up and down, as it plays along, resolves rating automation. Again, this isn't meant to be how to mix audio, it's just showing you how things work. And you'll see there, we actually have a representation of that fader over time. So if I hit play, you can hear the background drone get quieter, louder as we fade through that. So it's a really quick way, especially if you've got something like a MIDI control panel. I have a Launchpad, I think it's a Launchpad XL, which is a sort of cheap MIDI controller with some faders on it. And you know, if I hit play here, you can see. In fact, I've got to turn on automation for that clip. And now if I hit play, it's just stopped working for me there, which isn't exactly what I wanted. So if I hit play, well, it worked when I was doing the demo earlier. The idea is if you have like a MIDI control surface, you'll be able to play through and control it from a physical fader if you want, if you don't want to have to click and drag and use the mouse here. We do have some additional controls for this, so that's just rating automation, you know, as we play through. If at any point we want to go in and actually just adjust that, we have a pencil tool. You'll see as I've done that, it's highlighted all these frames, all these little individual sort of like keyframeable points here. I can also go in and actually just start drawing automation with that pen tool. If I want to select multiple points, say I'm not happy with what I've done, I can use this selection box just here, select range, select that. I could delete it if I want. I could select them all and move them wherever I want. It's really sort of, you can get quite granular with it. And you know, like I said, I can zoom all the way in here to a sample level, and you'll see this is what we couldn't do on the edit page. I can zoom all the way into a sample level and get really, really granular with that automation if I want to. The last thing I'm going to sort of touch on automation here is this button here, which is automation follows edit, which is handy if, you know, if we are just replacing audio, say, you know, we're replacing camera scratch audio with a shotgun or a lav mic that was recorded at the same time. It's picked up similar audio, so we know the automation is going to be roughly the same. We can just drag and drop it in and replace it. And if I come to my selection tool here, I can select a clip, I can click, oh, it's decided not to work for me. There we go. Now that I've turned it on, the automation follows edit. If I click and move that, you'll see it stays exactly in the same position of that clip where I wanted it to begin, or where I had it to begin with. If I don't want to do that, you know, if I, for whatever reason, I want to keep the automation at that exact point in the timeline, I can just turn off automation follows edit. And now if I move that clip, you'll see the automation stays there, and I can move the clip, I can replace it, delete it, do whatever I want with it after the fact. So it's a really sort of quick bit of automation there. The last thing, oh my God, so much to get through in this, it's really difficult. I'll try and do a little bit more. I hope people don't mind if I go over sort of 4 o'clock as a limit. I'll try not to go too late, but there's a lot of stuff I want to try and touch on here. And this one's going to be recording dialogue as well. So we can actually record ADR, you know, we can record dialogue straight into Resolve if we want to. To do this, I'm actually just going to add a track. I'm going to add a track down at the bottom here, right click, add track. I'm going to call this DX VO for voiceover. And if I pull out my mixer again to get down to the track that I just added, this A11 DX VO. If I come all the way up, where it says no input, if I click on that and go to input, you'll see I now get this patch input output window, which we can get as well. We can get if we go to the Fairlight drop down menu here and go to patch input output. And what I'm going to do, I'm using a webcam at the moment to speak through on Zoom, but Resolve will also pick it up. Hopefully, I've not tried running them both at the same time. We're going to find out how this works. So if I select the NVIDIA broadcast microphone there and just select the track that I want to patch that to, hit patch, and then close that window. If I now arm this track, there you go. As I speak, you can see the meters start to move in there as well. Now, one thing I'm going to do, although this is absolutely fantastic, the NVIDIA broadcast software, if it opens, there we go. The NVIDIA broadcast software is brilliant for noise reduction. So I have a fan behind me, and I apologize for the next couple of seconds. You're going to hear the fan. I'm going to turn off the noise removal because we're going to use the noise removal plugin a little bit. So I'm going to turn that off there, and we're just going to record some audio really quickly. What are we going to say? It's set in space. One of my favorite films is Star Wars. Let's do a knockoff Star Wars intro, like a really sort of cheesy movie director thing. Instead of a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, we're just going to go with a while back somewhere else. Why not? So I've patched my microphone to my track. I've armed the track for recording, and now I'm going to hit record. So a while ago, somewhere else. There we go. Done my really sort of knockoff voiceover there. And now if I come back, I'm going to disarm that track because I don't need to hear it. Well, it's not going anywhere. That is interesting. Again, because it's switched over to Dolby Mix for some reason. So now if I hit play, a while ago, somewhere else. There we go. Done a really sort of cheesy, quick voiceover. I can push up the levels if I want. I'm going to turn automation off for that. So, in fact, whilst I'm doing that, I'll turn noise removal back on, so you don't have to listen to the fan behind me. And if I hit play, a while ago, somewhere else. There we go. That's the audio that I've just recorded into Resolve. It's great. It works. It's functional. I'm not a voiceover actor by any stretch of the imagination, but it does what I need it to do. So we can record directly into the Fairlight page if we want to. So let's do some really quick cleanup of this audio. Then I'll look at exporting, and then we'll let you get off. So what I'm going to do, effects library again. The whole reason I turned that off was so I could use this noise reduction plugin. So if I solo this track and play, turn that off. A while ago, somewhere else. There you go. You can hear it's quite noisy. You can hear the fan, you can hear the computer fans, and I want to get rid of that. So I'm just going to click and drag. I'm going to drag it onto that clip because that's the only clip in that track. If I wanted, if I had multiple clips in there, I could drag it to that track. But in this case, I just have it on a single clip. So if I just move this pop-up window a little bit, what we have is we have two options in this pop-up window for our noise reduction. We have the automatic speech mode, which if I turn on and then hit play, a while ago, somewhere else. You'll see that's made quite a big difference. If I want to at any point, I can listen to just the noise that it's pulling out. So hit play. You can see that's the noise that it's pulling out. And if I want to hear it sort of before and after, play before, a while ago, somewhere else. Again, turn that back on. A while ago, somewhere else. There we go. I apologize. You're having to listen to, me to begin with, and then a recorded version of me. It must get quite dull. So the noise reduction, the auto speech mode works really well, but we do also have this manual option here. And what Resolve has is some really good sort of AI, the DaVinci Resolve neural engine for processing effects and things like that. Depends on the effect you're doing, obviously. But one of them is the ability to learn noise when it comes to this noise reduction plugin. So if I mark an endpoint in my timeline, going to mark an out point just before I start speaking. I'm going to click on this learn button, and I'm going to use Alt and / or Option / if you're on your Mac. And what that'll do, in fact, Control / first, turn on loop. And then if I hit Alt / it'll just play into out, and it'll just loop that section. So all I'm doing there is getting Resolve to learn the pattern of the noise a while ago, and then it pulls that noise out. So really quick, really simple, easy to use noise reduction functions there. The last sort of cleanup I'll do on this is probably some EQ. So if I find my my voiceover track there, there's sort of some boominess. I'm not the biggest fan of it. In fact, what I'll do, if I open my inspector, you'll see with that clip selected, I can now go across to the effects tab because that's where my effects are, and you'll see we have all the settings in here as well. So we don't have to open the pop-up window, but we can using this sort of small slider icon there if we want. Or I'm going to set that to speech mode, automatic speech mode, just because it's a little bit easier. And then what we're going to do, if I play through this one, hopefully, a while ago, somewhere else, there's an odd sort of weird booming frequency in there that I don't quite like. So I'm going to come up to the EQ palette here on my channel strip, double click on it to open that EQ. It's a multi-band EQ. And I'm going to show you a quick trick that's really handy for removing specific frequencies. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to take, a specific point here, and instead of trying to just pull it out and then navigate to where it is, what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to boost that frequency there, and I'm just going to sort of slide it up and down to find where it sounds the worst. Once I've found out where it sounds the worst, I'll do the inverse and I'll pull it all the way down. So if I do the same thing again, I will mark an out point, I will mark an in point, out point, in point, and then I will again Alt or Option / to loop that, or to play around that. A while ago, somewhere else. A while ago, somewhere else. A while ago, somewhere else. Yeah, so it's about there. Sounds absolutely awful. So again, if I pull that out, do the same thing. A while ago, somewhere else. A while ago, somewhere else. There we go. Again, I can turn this on or off if I want. A while ago, somewhere else. A while ago, somewhere else. That sort of boominess has now gone out of that clip altogether. So really simple stuff. Again, this is available. This is the track EQ. If we open the inspector, we can do this on a clip level. If we have whole buses, we can do it on a bus level as well. Again, we can't do it on a VCA or a group, but it's a really handy tool that's in there. So last thing I'm going to do, there's so much more that we could cover, and you know what, I'll mention this at the end. There's so much more that we could cover. What I'm going to do is I'll mention that at the end. So last thing really is the deliver settings in here. So the render page, we've assumed some sort of knowledge of Resolve throughout all of this this webinar. But what we're looking at here is the render page. This is where you export your files from DaVinci Resolve. And we're used to seeing, custom YouTube presets, Twitter presets, all these sorts of things. But if we come all the way to the end, we have two presets here. One for Pro Tools, and the Pro Tools one's really handy because this will export not just our clips, but it will export an AAF, a round trip file that will allow us to import our timeline audio back into Pro Tools, so that we can then begin our mix, or we can send it off to someone. So whilst we've been doing this all in Fairlight, which is great, there might be cases where the client wants something sent to a certain engineer, or you might not have the time or capacity to do the audio yourself, so you might send it off to another facility. So having that Pro Tools round trip, we can export to Pro Tools, and when the sound engineers worked on it, they can export an AAF, and we can import that into Resolve as well. And we can do an audio only export if we want. And the audio only export, weirdly, you can select to export video as well if you want. But in here, we can select WAV files. and you'll see down the bottom here, we have these output tracks. So right now it's outputting our mix, but if at any point I wanted to output the mix track, I wanted to put out all the separate buses as well, or any of the timeline tracks, I can do that by just clicking on this small plus button here, and that adds another output track. So, you know, I might want to put my dialogue bus out on its own. I might want to send out, actually, I want the music to be worked on. It doesn't have its own bus, so I can go to timeline track, and then I think my music was track 10. So then I'm going to get 3 tracks that are outputted. One will be my main mix, one will be the dialogue bus, and one will be the music bus, the music track as well. So I can export all of these different things really quickly from the render page within Resolve. So I know that was quick. I know that was a very whistle-stop tour of the Fairlight page, and we didn't even get to touch on, you know, a lot of the stuff, you know, we could have done. You know, there's things like, oops, not the EQ. If we go to the dynamics panel, we have our compressor, we have a limiter. We can set up side chaining. So for example, if we want our music track to dip automatically when the dialogue track is active, when someone's speaking, we can set that up using these side chain controls here. There's really a lot of flexibility and a lot of tools in the Fairlight page for Resolve. So this has been a, like I said, this has been a really quick whistle-stop tour of Fairlight to try and demystify the main parts. You know, what are the tool sets, the range tool, how does automation work, how do I record a voiceover, what are buses, how do I use buses, why do I use buses, what's the difference between a bus and a group. You know, all these sorts of things that can be a bit tricky when you get started. We've tried to sort of break down a little bit there. If this is something that, you know, that interests you, if there's more of this, you want to see more of this stuff, you want another sort of, you know, if it's a video or a webinar, if you want some more stuff on Fairlight or Resolve or anything like that, drop, you know, Scan Pro Video team, drop them an email, and we'll do our best to put together something that we can then, you know, put out for you. So what I'll do really quickly is I'll actually put the Scan Pro Video email team in the chat there at scan.co.uk. So it is just scanprovideo@scan.co.uk. So drop them an email. We'll work on something, and we'll try and, you know, if you want to know more about Fairlight, if you want to know about the sidechain, you want, you know, just a quick 2 or 3 minute video on how the sidechain works, and you want us to put that on our YouTube channel, email us and we'll jump on that. So like I said, we'll do sort of any questions you have. I see that Andy sent a question in the chat already, so I'll have a look at that and answer that. If anyone else has any questions, feel free to throw them in chat, and we'll get an answer to that as well. So would you expect to be able to include this scene timeline into the main timeline? Would you expect all the effects to happen on the main timeline? And would you expect the render of the main timeline to be correct if it has multiple scenes? So I'll try and break that down. What I think you mean is all the mixing that I've done here, if I put that in as, say, a nested timeline in another timeline, how does that work? So it gets a little bit tricky. It's quite a big topic, that. What I'll do is I'll come back to my edit page here as an example, if I can. Not what I was looking for. And we have some timelines here. So I'm just going to really sort of like quickly, I'm just going to do something pretty drastic that'll be pretty noticeable. So I'm actually going to pull everything but the music track and Philip all the way down. So actually, Philip doesn't need to be all the way up, but I'm just going to pull all those tracks down. So now I'm working in this 0 start timeline. If I come across to this 01 timeline here, and I drag the 010 in, you'll hear now as if I hit play, again, it's switched over to that, shouldn't have done. again, there we go. We only have the tracks. We only have the tracks that we we only have the tracks that we left up in the last one, which were, let me have a look, it was music and Philip. So again, so there we go. We have the same tracks. Now, it sounded as though the drone track had come through there. I don't know why that would be. It shouldn't have done. The drone track shouldn't have come through. Basically, all the changes we make in our nested timeline should apply. The thing to consider is, or thing to, where it gets kind of tricky, I guess, is the audio track here in the audio track in the timeline that we put in there is going to be the main bus. So in this case, if I go back to my original timeline, the audio track that we have is going to be our mix bus here, basically. And when I pull that in, as long as everything I want is applied and then mixed down onto that mix bus, that's what we should get here. That's the sort of simplest way to do it. It gets a bit confusing if you start nesting timelines in timelines and you've got to sort of jump around, and it can be a bit tricky to do it that way. But the way that I would suggest it is just make sure everything's set up so that at the end of your timeline, it all comes down to one sort of your first main bus output. As long as it all mixes down into that and there's no sort of effects or anything applied to that bus, I would say it should come across. The other thing you can do, I suppose, if you render it in place or you decompose it in place, it's not going to retain any of that. So as soon as I hit decompose, you'll see it doesn't retain any of those changes that I made in the mixer panel, really. So I wouldn't, it's a tricky one. Generally, when you're getting to the point of doing your final audio mix, I wouldn't be doing it on separate timelines and then joining the timelines together after the fact. I would generally try and join all the timelines together. So nest them all, decompose them, and then do your audio mix from there, just in terms of sort of best practices, really, just to avoid any sort of hiccups or things that might catch you out. That's the easiest, most straightforward way. Go for picture lock first. So picture lock's where you're set, you know there's not going to be any more changes to the video. Try and get everything as flat as possible so you don't have like 10 timeline layers or whatever. Try and get everything sort of as flat as possible and then work on your audio mix, because otherwise it just becomes a bit confusing and a bit messy. I hope that helps answer that a little bit. Like I said, it's quite a big topic to dive into. But again, if you have any of those questions, feel free to ask us. We'll do our best to help. If not, Blackmagic, their support guys, if you're having any trouble with anything like that, or you want to know if Resolve will actually do what you need it to, their technical support team, technical sales support team, TSS, are absolutely fantastic as well. So don't hesitate to contact either Scan Pro Video or Blackmagic with any sort of technical queries or problems or anything like that. Everyone's super friendly, and they'll do their best to help you out as much as they can. So I'll give it a few more seconds, just see if there's any more questions popping up in chat. Hopefully I'm not leaving people confused or with more questions than they came with. Again, if you do, drop us an email. Outside of that, again, thank you so much for your time today. I know it's been a long one, been a quick one in terms of the pace that we're going through everything. Really appreciate your time. Hope you're all staying safe, and hopefully we can put some more of this stuff on for you. So thanks again. Take it easy, and we'll see you next time.
For more information on any of the products and solutions mentioned in this webinar, contact the Pro Video team today. And you can also shop our Blackmagic design range at Scan Pro Video. If you haven't checked out our other sessions yet, then head over to the Pro Video YouTube channel and search Blackmagic Design Webinars. Thanks for watching.